Okay, so now let's make a little burst using a shape layer. So we can use the rounded rectangle tool just right off the bat. You could, like I said, use the rectangle and just round it. But I'm going to make sure all the layers are deselected. I'm going to click and drag. And there is our rounded rectangle. I'm going to round it a little bit more. So it's more of like a pill shape. And let's just, so the anchor point, so in this little rectangle we created, the anchor point has to be 0, 0. It should be there by default. But let's, I'm just going to make the streak, or the little burst right here. So create a keyframe on the position within this rectangle properties, within the shape layer. And then go forward a bit, and let's just move it up on the Y, or yeah, let's move it down on the Y. And we might have to change that later, but this is just going to help us visualize what's going on. And it might also help if we just solo this layer by clicking this dot. So the shape moves like that. Okay, so up here, some layers like shape layers or text layers have these extra animation properties you can add to them if you click this little arrow in the next to the content. And there's some cool stuff. I haven't messed with a lot of them, but you should. For example, if you hit this, well, we're going to just use the repeater. So repeater will take your object that you animated and just create instances of it. And that's good for us because all we have to do is worry about one little spark, and then the rest will burst out without any effort that we have to do. So we have our animated object, but we need this to be more in like a starburst formation. So now within that rectangle path, we created a new property called repeater. And so let's drop open this repeater tab, and we can see how many copies we want. We can offset it. I'm going to set this to 0 offset, and let's just have 7 copies for now, although they're pretty thick, so we might change that in a second. Now within this transform repeater, or within the repeater now created its own transform properties. And as you can see in the position, there's an offset, or well, it creates kind of the distance between we're transforming when the instance is created. So every 185 pixels, a new instance is created. But let's set that to 0. So now the instances are being created right on top of each other. And then if we add some rotation, we can see that as our shape moves, these instances burst out. But right now this is only like a random amount. So we need to figure out like what looks good, and you can eyeball it and that would look fine, but if you want it to be exact, we could say, okay, we have how many instances? We have 7 total, and we want it to go around 360 degrees. So we could say 360 degrees divided by 7 instances, and it's going to figure out using math. The divide sign is just that backslash, so 51.4 degrees, and now it's pretty much a perfect distance between each instance. The other thing we'll want to do is kind of animate the burst so they streak out and then scale to 0. So let's close our transform repeater for now. Let's close our repeater and go back into our rectangle path. So let's say at this point those look good to me. So for size, let's just create a keyframe. And I'm going to unlink the chain because I want these to be animated slightly differently, those size parameters. So here, let's squish the y to 0, and sure, we can squish the x to 0. So now we have this kind of burst, and maybe as they get out here, we'll just shrink it back to 0, and let's just see how this looks. Okay. So really they burst out and then they look like they kind of shrink. So what might be nicer is if we go to this position property, we'll drag it out all the way to here. So now they burst out here. But let's just see if we can keep it moving. So make sure you're right on that keyframe, page up, page down, and let's move them out to this point. Okay. I'm going to select all these, hold Alt or Option, and click those last frame. So now we have something a little quicker. Oop, hold Alt. I feel like they're a little too thick in this, so if I want to jump back and forth between keyframes, if I just hit J to go backwards or K to go forward, it'll line up right on that keyframe. And I'm going to make these a little thinner and a little less long. So now they pop like that. And let's speed it up a bit. Okay, that's good. You can select those, hit F9 or Fn and then F9, easy ease, and then here's what I have. Maybe a little too fast. Cool. Let's see, I say that works. So if I want to move this rectangle, you can see it kind of gets clipped right there. And if I go all the way down, or if I have this layer and I hit P and then slide it over, oh, I thought it would clip it. So you could do it that way. But you can also, within the contents and the rectangle, there's also, you know, the transform rectangle, which you could slide the position as well. So the reason that matters, you can use either way, but we're going to duplicate this a few times. So let's call this burst. Let's give it a different color. Sure, and maybe unsolo it to see kind of how it fits with our colors. And really, we can just click it, and let's say hit V or click this arrow to go to the selection tool. And I think, be careful to pay attention to what you're selecting, because I think you have to grab the original instance if you're going to click and drag. So do that. And now I'm thinking, oh, it looks a little too slow again. So, okay, so that's better. So let's duplicate this first burst. So Command D, and let's just offset it in time a little bit, and maybe give it a different color. Okay, so there we have a burst. And let's start cleaning up our workspace. So I'm going to shift, select all those streaks. So I clicked the top one, and then if you hold shift and click the first one, you can do control or command shift C to pre-compose it. And now we'll just call that new, it made a composition, we'll call these streaks. Okay, and these bursts, I think I'm just gonna be happy with this one burst, and let's pre-compose this, command shift C, and let's see if, yeah, so what we should do, let's hop in, let me rename it, call it burst. I don't want it to clip, because I think here when it clips, like right now it's clipping off right there. If we then were to go to our flashy overload thing and move this layer around, that clip will remain. So let's open up our burst, select those layers, and just move them. Move them so they're relatively centered, so they stay within the frame. Okay, and then on this layer we can just move this around to be like here, and then let's duplicate this layer, and we're going to add an effect called Colorama. So there should be an Effects and Presets tab over here. If you click it, then you can just search for things. Let's add this colorama effect and blend with original, and then let's just move this. And if you want, you can modify in its output cycle. You can change this to be like fire or something, and blend with original. Let's see, mossy. Yeah, these are all kind of weird. Let's just do ramp blue. Sure. Okay, so then let's offset this in time a little bit so it comes in later. Maybe you can even hit R and rotate it. Notice it rotates around the anchor point, so you might need to move that anchor point. I just clicked this little tool right here and then clicked this. This is your anchor point if you want to do that. Okay, I'm not too happy about the color. There might be some other ways we could change the color as well. But you can't change, if you change the color of the original burst within its pre-composed thing, it'll change it for all of them. So let's just focus on getting some pops. And maybe 3 should be good enough. So pop, pop, pop. And so now we have 3, that should be good. I'm gonna, on this final one, I'm gonna make a new color. Let's try ramp green. So now we have, and if you look on mine, since it's scaled only, since those bursts scaled only to 0 on the Y, there's still a pixel left on this X axis. So I'm going to go into this original burst and let's see if I can find it. So let's hit U and U. And right here we can see that it scales to 0 on the Y, but it's left 60 pixels on the X. So maybe right here I'll go 1 frame after and just type in 0. And I'll do the same over here, type 0. So now it fully disappears, and now there won't be any pixels seen. And since, here, I can just close these pre-composed layers. And now since I was just duplicating this pre-composed layer, it should fix it for everything, which is nice. So that's kind of the advantage of pre-composing one layer. For example, if I go back to this burst, I mean, if I double click on any of these bursts, it'll open the same pre-composed layer. So I could, change this blue to be more of a like magenta, and then it'll give me a different look for all of them. Okay, so let's just finish these bursts real quick. I'm just going to duplicate those 3 with Command D, move them to the top, slide them over in time. And we should already have some bursts going here. Let's move this one. Where's this one going? There and there. Just to kind of make it look like the bursts are creating the shock waves. Okay, so we have like a completed animation, but it's 10 seconds long and you don't want to like sit through all this space. So what you can do is click and drag this, your little work area. You can drag it to be shorter, or if you hit N with your mouse in this timeline area, it'll trim your composition to that point. Actually, your composition is still 10 seconds. But your work area is like 2 seconds, and then it loops quicker. Okay, so that was basically a crash course in motion graphics, and let's see if we can do something like this for a real project now.